Hello everybody, this is CrossForger, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial for you. But before we start this tutorial, I just want to say Merry Christmas, because it'd probably be Christmas by the time this comes out, maybe afterwards. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, I'm in my Christmassy outfit. I made this recently, and I'm also wearing something that I've recently earned from a challenge thing going on. And it's this guy. Yep, this little cape here. I earned this from the Office Eerie Challenge. And it was pretty fun to do. I don't think it's going anymore when this video comes out, but it was fun to do. The cape was one of the things that I got from doing that. But today we're going to be doing a tutorial on redstone. Now this may look daunting, very daunting in fact, and I probably shouldn't have flown up here so you to see it, but I'm going to be teaching you the basics of redstone. And you may be asking, what's the basics of redstone? Well, the basics of redstone are these items here. The items themselves, not the contraptions or the little circuits or whatever you might call them. It's simply just these items. So we're going to hop right into it and we're going to learn about how to use these so you can become a basic redstoner. Okay, so the first one on the list is Redstone Dust. This guy's pretty simple and it's one of the first things you get when becoming a redstoner. So yeah, when placed on the ground, like so, it does pretty much nothing. But you can attach it on all four sides, as shown here. So that's pretty cool. It can be attached in this way. It can also be attached from blocks and go up one block jumps. It cannot go up two, though. It can only go up one block. And it can go down in the ground by one block. And that's pretty good as well. It can also lead into things and turn lights on. But one of the downfalls to Redstone Dust is its signal strength. The signal strength is up to 15 blocks, and as seen here, these are 15 blocks. And as you can see, it gets darker and darker until it completely turns off. And this is the 16th block. This is 15 here. So that's as far as it goes. And as you can see, it's much brighter down here than it is up here. This can also be connected in a 4x4 area, but this causes problems for contraptions that are right up next to each other. If you're trying to just power one thing, you'll end up powering both instead of just one. You also find that redstone cannot jump one to the next. As you see here, it has to be connecting. There cannot be anything, there can't be a gap, there can't be a hole, it has to be connecting for it to work. That's the basics of Redstone Dust. And that was pretty simple, right? Yep. And it's still pretty simple from here. The Redstone Block, or the Block of Redstone as it's called, is pretty interesting. You might think, does it work just like redstone? Do you just place it like here and then you can power it? No, actually it's a power source itself. It's a always active power source. And as you see here, this is powered currently. And you'll see if I place the block here, it'll power the redstone. And when I break it, it unpowers. And this can power from multiple angles. From all 6 sides of this, it'll always power. And it can even power sometimes from angles of some sort, using some weird quasi-connectivity or whatever you might call it. And it can also do things like power on lamps, having constant power. And as you can see here, it can power blocks below it, to the side of it, and on top of it. Redstone Dust, it has to be connecting. It cannot power without being connected to the block. And that's it for the Redstone Block. Pretty simple, right? Yep. Now we're on to the next power source. The lever. This is pretty simple invention. It's like a light switch. You just one way powers, the other way powers off. So it's pretty simple. And a lot of people use it for their light switches in houses in Minecraft. And yeah, I just set it today. I set it today for you guys real quick. Okay, but yeah, it can also power through blocks, as you can see here. When attached to a block, like a light switch on a wall, as the wires are attached behind it. And it just turns on and off. And the neat thing about levers is that they can be placed on all sides of a block. Every single side. And another thing is they can also power redstone below it. So that's really nice, and you can also do this with a lever on the side. It works all that way. And that's it for the lever as well. Again, really, really simple. Then we have the Redstone Torch. This like the Redstone Block, is always active. But unlike the Redstone Block, it can be shut off. So it's kind of a mix between the Redstone Block and the lever. When it's pointed into a block or placed on the ground adjacent to the block it's trying to power, it will power it. And this is pretty handy. But what if you want to depower this instead of having it constantly powered? Well, you can do things by sending a signal into the block. And this works every single time. And so when this is powered, this depowers. This is a concept used a lot in logic gates. And logic gates, we'll talk about those probably in another episode if I end up doing one. If you guys really like this, I can talk some more about logic gates where this is used. So yeah, it can be powered and depowered. And it can power through blocks like the lever. So this is powering into this block and it's powering that. And this is the same for whether it's on the floor or on here. That's really nice. It can also be used in a lot of things like signal towers or torch towers as I like to call them. And you'll see something interesting going on with this. How this is powered, this is not powered, and this is powered, and this is not powered. Well, that's because this one is sending a signal into this block. And since the Redstone Torch, like back here, is being powered from behind, it's depowering, which is not powering this block anymore, which is allowing this torch to be on. And this torch is powering this block, which is depowering this. And so we get no signal coming out here. But if we power this, and it doesn't matter where we power this, if we turn this on, you'll see it switches out. And now the top one is powered. And I'll just move back a little bit so that you can see what I'm talking about. And you'll see those torches right there are depowering and powering. And you don't need the repeater there. I just have that there because that's what they used to have, where you had a repeater sticking into this block and it powered this block, which then would depower this. But apparently you don't need that anymore. It works just fine without the repeater. Now if we move on, there's a interesting thing about redstone torches. They can actually be like, they can sizzle out or turn themselves off. And you'll see here. And they just sizzled out and now they're off completely. And you'll see they're just sizzle out again. And now this one's going crazy with all this. And yeah, it can get pretty crazy. So I wouldn't suggest doing things like this. This is created using redstone going along the back here and then 3 torches. And it just sizzled out. So you have to be careful of that in redstone contraptions, accidentally making something like this. And I don't really know why or how this happens, but yeah, just try to avoid it. And as I showed, redstone torches can power into the block, so it's powering blocks above it. It can do that. It can power blocks beside it, but it can't power below it since, well, the power source is on top of the torch, and so it's going up or to the side, but it can't go down. And that's the redstone torch. Now we're moving on to the stone button. The stone button is a pretty simple tool. It's like a lever, but it can only stay powered for as long as it's pressed down. And I guess I'll say it's not just the stone button, it's also all buttons, but we're mainly talking about the stone one. Yes, as you can see there, as long as it's pressed, it will power the redstone. And buttons, like levers, can be placed on all faces of the block. And it will also power stuff below it, to the sides of it. So that's pretty nice. And it'll power lights, and it just works pretty well. But something about buttons is there's 2 different types. There's wood buttons, so you'll find a lot of different types of buttons. So we have the oak button and the stone button are your generic ones, but there are many different types of buttons, and some of them are made from stone, and some of them from wood. So I'm just showing a few of them. So the wood buttons work where when you press them, they stayed powered for much longer. And the stone ones power for much shorter. So stone buttons are used a lot in redstone contraptions when you want a certain signal length. And we'll talk about signal lengths and signal strengths later. But yeah, that's the wood and stone buttons. Now we're on to pressure plates. I've got a stone pressure plate here, but like the buttons, there's also the wood variants, and we'll get to that. And this works by when the player stands on it, it will power it. And as long as the player is standing on it, it will power it. And when you step off, it will depower. And this is the same for the wood pressure plate and the stone pressure plate. And they seem to have no difference when you step off them. They seem to both depower at the same time. But there is a difference when you use things like bows and items. Now, ignore my back pocket. I was working on other things before this. But yeah, entities. When you shoot an arrow at a wood pressure plate, it powers it. And it'll stay powered as long as that arrow is on it. And this is really fun for adventure maps and stuff like that if you want to use it. But stone pressure plates don't power when arrows are shot into them. And as long as the arrow's on it, it'll stay powered. But if you take it off, it'll depower. And this is the same for if you throw an item on it. As long as the item's on it, it'll stay powered. But stone pressure plates don't work that way. It just doesn't power. You have to be standing on it yourself. Or entities like cows or zombies or just animals of some sort. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, and maybe you'll find a use for that. Pressure plates can also be set up right against doors, so you can use them to open it, and it'll close automatically behind you. This is really useful for houses if you just want to go in and out and don't have to worry about opening or closing your door. And it'll also work for trapdoors and fence gates. So yeah, pretty useful. And that's the pressure plates. Now we're on to the repeater. The redstone repeater, that is. I'm not sure it really makes much difference. What is the repeater? Well, the repeater works sort of like redstone dust. It seems to work like redstone dust. But it really isn't. Redstone dust can travel up to 15 blocks, like I said. And no further. But if we use a repeater anywhere within this place, and I'm just going to put it at the 16th block, it will continue the signal. It will essentially repeat the signal. So it's taking a signal in and it's simply just extending it 15 more blocks. And well, you can place this in as many as you want and the signal will continue. And you can place this in, like I said, anywhere, and it will repeat the signal 15 blocks. So yeah, pretty cool. It can also power into blocks, and like I showed, where I was using it for the signal tower, but you don't really need it in there. So it powers into this block and depowers the torch. And then you can power it on. And you can also use it where it powers through blocks into another repeater, through a block into another repeater, through a block and into another repeater, and into that redstone dust. And you'll see that through there. Pretty simple. And you may think this works for redstone dust as well, but it only gets as far as that. Now you can replace that with that, and then it powers through, and then it doesn't go any further. So then you have to replace these with repeaters. And so these are pretty useful. And they can even go out to the side. Since this is powering a block, the block is then sending out redstone signals on all sides. So yeah, that's pretty useful as well. And that means you could probably do something like this and just have it continue powering. And so it can take pretty sharp corners. That's really nice. Another thing is that repeaters have their ability to go back a couple ticks. Now, quickly before we get started, what is a tick? Well, a redstone tick is what I'm referring to, and that is about 0.1 seconds. A game tick, which you may hear people say, is about 0.05 seconds. And so a redstone tick is about 2 game ticks. And there are about 20 ticks in a second. So there are about 20 ticks going on every single second in this game. And that's how the game runs on ticks. So yes, you can set it back to about 4 ticks. So you have the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when powered here, you'll see they each go at different times. They're delays. So I'm delaying it by a tick. So this one is the fastest, well, out of repeaters. This is actually 0 ticks. Redstone traveling by itself without repeaters. And this is 1 tick. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, so as you can see here, these 0 ticks. This will take 1 redstone tick per repeater to go through. 2 redstone ticks. 3 redstone ticks. And 4 redstone ticks to travel between each repeater. And you'll see that in this example. The 4 is definitely taking much, much longer to travel through than any of the other ones. Redstone repeaters also have a interesting thing where you can make pulse generators, and you'll also lock repeaters. When repeaters have redstone traveling in from the side, it'll actually lock the repeater, and it'll give this weird bedrock look to it. And this is simply just holding the power back. And this makes a pulse generator, this simple design here. And when I power it, so see when it's powered, there's nothing going on. But when I depower, it powers for a very short amount of time. And so it makes a pulse. And a pulse is simply just a power, how long it powers for. So wood buttons and stone buttons power for a certain amount of pulses for a length of time. And signal strength is simply how strong it is. So this is signal strength of 15, since it's right up next to it. So it's powering the most it can power. And then 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it'd go to 0. But this is here doing something else, and we'll talk about that later. So that's signal strength and also pulse. So yes, this is simply a pulse generator. It creates a short pulse, and it can be used in contraptions, and you'll see this in some contraptions. You also find that when you power through, and this is a pulse limiter, it limits the pulse, so it's shorter. And you see there, it only flashed for a second. And this is a really simple design. It's really good, and I used it in a redstone door I made. I may show you that sometime. And it simply shortens the pulse, so some redstone contraptions require a 0-tick redstone pulse. And so like redstone, it powers as fast as redstone, and depowers just the same. So it's powering, this is powering it, but it's moving the block out of the way, so the redstone, like I said, redstone has to be connected, but it has nothing to connect it. So it's cut off instantly. And redstone is powering in this to this block, like I showed back there. It's powering the block, which is powering below it, which is a piston. And so the piston is sticking up and pushing the block. And this is continuing the pulse. And like I showed, you can't have redstone here. The signal just doesn't continue. You have to have a repeater to continue the signal. And so that's what's happening here. The repeater is continuing the signal and pushing it to this block. And this is used in some contraptions, and it's really useful for things like having a sticky piston that doesn't stick to the block anymore. And you'll see what I mean. It actually pushes this block, and it moves so quickly that it detaches the block from the sticky piston. So yeah, something pretty cool, and you may mess around with those later. They're pretty fun. And then we have repeaters here, and the signal can't actually turn corners without the help of blocks like I showed back there. When powered, it powers, and then it locks the repeater and just can't get any further. And you may think, oh, when I depower it, the signal will continue. Nope. It just can't turn corners without redstone dust. And that's shown right here as well. And that is the redstone repeater. Next up, we have the comparator. Right here, the redstone comparator. This little guy, well, he's an interesting one, and he's very, very confusing. It took me a little bit to figure out how this one kind of worked, and I'm still even a little confused sometimes. It has two modes, and that's its comparison mode, as shown here, and its subtraction mode, as shown here. And that's with the little light on. And how do you get to these modes? Well, you simply just right-click, and right-click again to turn it on or off. And also an interesting thing, which I didn't really show with the repeaters, is that they face certain directions. You can't power this, you can't power the other direction. So if I stick redstone here, it won't travel through. And you can see which way it points by this arrow here to find right about there. As you can see, it points that way. And that's the same for this one. It has an arrow that points that way. And you see it powers through and continues powering through. And it won't power the other way. So yeah, just quickly so you understand that. Alright, now we move on to this section. So what's its comparison mode? Well, what it's doing is comparing this. It's comparing what's in front of it to signal strengths beside it. And, well, we have no signal strengths going into it. But this alone right here is very useful. So what it does is compare the block in front of it with what's going on beside it or whatever, but there's no signal strength going in. So what it's doing is taking the full 15. And it can compare items like cakes. And when I eat the cake, it'll actually lower the comparison. And when I completely eat the cake, it has nothing else to compare, so it's completely gone. And this is seen right here with this chest. This chest is full of items, so it's sending out the strongest signal it can, which is 15. And you see it has nothing there. So this is 15 blocks, and that's due to having a full chest. But if I take items out of this chest, and you see there, I'm just going to take a good portion of these items. It will actually have a lower signal strength. As you can see, it was comparing all the way up to here. The signal strength was super strong. But now, it's gone down to here. It's lost a bunch of blocks. And that's from taking out all of these. And you can just take out more and more and more and more and more and more. And you see right there, it's gotten even smaller. And you can see this live if you want, but... And you see it starts lowering itself. There we go. It lost some of its power. And when you take everything out, there's no more power. And we'll just stick these back in. And when you stick them back in, they'll, of course, continue the power. And this is very useful in counting games and stuff of that sort if you want to use them in mini games. Yeah, that's its comparison mode. But what about its subtraction mode? This is where it gets pretty tricky. And I'll leave some videos in the description that really help me to understand this. Maybe it'll help you. But I'll try to tell you as much as I can. And this may look a little messy, but this is just my example thing. I've kind of forgotten a little bit how this works, but I guess I'll try to see what I can do. Okay, so we'll put a signal strength of... We'll go with 15. That's pretty simple. Okay, so, yep, it's traveling all the way up to 15, and this is traveling up to 15. Now you may be wondering, why does it go all the way up to here? Because the comparator actually sets out its own little signal. So it actually starts with 1 here. So it travels on to this far, but just ignore that. All right, so we're putting in a signal strength of 15. So that's directly here, and that's powering it all the way up to there. And we'll also put in a signal strength of 15. Now what happens here is that when I power this, they cancel out each other, and it completely turns off. Because 15 minus 15 is, well, 0. So that's pretty simple. And so we'll just put 15 in there. But then what happens if we go 15, well, minus 14? And this would be 14 right here, because that is signal strength of 15, 14. And so yes, well, 15 minus 14 should be 1. And this is correct, well, because this is sending out a signal strength of 1 right here. It's sending out its own signal strength. So what do I mean by this? Well, I'll just fly over here so you understand. So this is going a full 15. This powers, but it only powers 1. It gives out its own signal of 1 and doesn't continue repeating the signal. And so it's giving out its own 1 power. So these signs are kind of wrong. So this should be 0. This should be 1, 2, 3, 4. So just you know, ignore these. So you don't have to think about them. Yep, these never existed. Okay, so yeah, it's sending out a signal strength of 1. So yeah, now what happens if we put in a signal strength of 13? Well, that's pretty obvious. 15 minus 13 gives us 2. And, well, if we ignore this guy right here, which I will simply just set up there, it is sending out a signal strength of 2. And this can happen if we go 14. That's now 3. 12, 4, and, well, so on as you go along. And so it's simply just subtracting the signal that's coming in from the side from the signal in the back, which is, well, 15 if you set it up to here. And so yeah, it's complicated, and I will not, like, you do not have to be like, oh, this is so confusing, like, this makes no sense. But it will probably make sense if you just keep trying and looking up different tutorials on it. It should eventually make sense to you, and that's what you're trying to go for. So yeah, there's some great videos that I learned of how to actually use this, and as like I fail to show you how to use it, so just, you know, watch those and they'll probably tell you a little bit better. But to move on, like I said, if you send a signal strength of 15, it won't work completely like a repeater. It'll simply just add one signal into it. It's kind of wimpy, but it continues the signal by one, so well, you got that. And that's the comparator, so yeah, we'll just leave this behind and continue on. Okay, now on to the pistons. Yes, I turned it to day again. We have two different types of pistons, the sticky piston and just the piston. How do these work? Well, the sticky piston, which will be on this side as always, so you can use that to correspond with, so sticky piston's always on the left and regular piston's on the right. The sticky piston sticks to its block. So it pushes and retracts the block it's attached to, or the blocks that's attached to the head of the piston. The regular pistons, they'll push out their blocks, but they don't stick to their block. And so you have to push them back yourself. So you have to push them back. And well, no matter how many times you do this, it's always not going to stick. And this is the same for vertically or horizontally, or whatever you'd like to say. And one of the only things that a sticky piston won't stick to is falling blocks. Yep, as you see, it sticks for a second and then falls. So it just doesn't really work that way. There are things in the game, like obsidian here, that can't actually be pushed by any pistons. No matter how many times you try to power this thing, it's just not going to push it. But if you take that away, it will push the blocks. Or push air that's in front of it. But when you place them back, it just won't push. And these are very useful for contraptions that you don't want to push certain blocks, but you want to push other blocks. And there are other blocks like, I believe, furnaces that don't get pushed and things like that. There are also things that go hand in hand with the piston, and that is the slime blocks. Now, here's the regular piston, and here's the sticky piston. As you can see, if I extend this and de-extend this, or retract it, they just don't stick. And you think, oh, well, I guess it's not very sticky or anything. I mean, it's slime, it should be sticky, right? But if you add a sticky piston to a slime block, and you extend it, you can then also retract it. And slime attaches on all sides of this. And you can even attach, well, more slime onto this. And you can simply push that. And that's where we get to things like piston push limits. And there's a piston push limit of about 12 blocks. Now, I made a mistake just then and attached the slime to the ground. And so what it was trying to do is essentially pull the whole earth with it, and that wouldn't have worked. So yeah, we're just going to quickly redo this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And you'll see right here that it can push 12 blocks. Yep, pretty easily. But if you add a 13th block to it and go to push it, it just doesn't work. And this is the same for whether you add a 13 block off to the side, like so. It just won't push it. You just can't push that many blocks. But there's also a second block, and that is the honey block. And this works the same as the slime block. Now, with the regular pistons, it doesn't do anything. But with a sticky piston, it retracts and pushes. But there's something interesting. Why are they both the same thing? Like, why did the Minecraft just make two blocks the same thing? Well, there actually is a difference. They don't stick to each other. As you can see right there, these are both sticky pistons. But two slime blocks, or 4 slime blocks here, do stick to each other, and they end up pulling things you don't want them to pull. And that's the same for honey blocks. They'll pull things you don't want them to pull. But if you do alternating blocks such as this, they'll push and retract on their own. That's the piston and the slime blocks and the honey blocks. Now we're moving on to our next item, and that is the observer. This one is very useful and used a lot, like a lot. And you'll find a lot of contraptions with this in it. But you don't have to be daunted by this guy anymore and his ominous staring face. Yeah. I promise, he's not staring at you, he's staring at blocks. And that's what he does. He observes, hence the name, what's happening in front of him, what's happening right here. Now, players can't be detected unless you use things like string. But as you can see right here, if I push a block in front of his face, he'll detect it and power it. And if I retract it and take it away from his face, he'll detect that too, because he's noticing the change in the block in front of him. And this is simply just powering into this block, which is powering this block, which you learned back there. An interesting thing is, it can also observe an observer. It can observe itself. And this makes for a very interesting redstone clock. How? Well, this is observing this block, which then this observes this block. And this block is observing that it's powered this. It's observing that this is changing. See, when an observer powers, it has a little change in it. It changes slightly. And this is detecting it. And so this powers. But this is also detecting this, and this is also detecting that. And so it's just a back and forth. And you'll see right here. And you'll see it's sending out a signals every single time it detects. And so this is constant. And you see right here, it's constantly powering out. And so this is very easy, quick redstone clock. And I may do a video on redstone clocks and redstone circuits and stuff like that, like I mentioned before. And you'll see, if I try to power, well, I mean, it locks the redstone, so that's interesting, but you can't really affect this is always powering. An interesting thing as well is the observer will detect changes in blocks like this as well. But it detects changes in trees. What do I mean by this? Well, these are oak leaves, and this is an oak log, as you can see here. And it thinks, when I place an oak log here, that this is now a tree. And it'll detect that change. And this is the same for right here. And right here. And how is this working? Well, like I said, it's thinking that these oak leaves are attached to this log, and so it's detecting that. And this can work in L shapes and stuff like that, but this has a limited range with these leaves of about 6 blocks, so this only allows for 6 blocks. This is very unique, as this is the only thing that works, so yeah. But yeah, this is a really fun trick, and, well, as you can see right here, there's nothing else to learn about. That's it! And as you can see here, if I move this slightly off to the side there, it shuts off the clock, so that's pretty nice. And yeah, they go back to observing nothing, and they can observe a whole host of different things. Composters, furnaces, I think, chests being open, stuff like that. Now we're on to something called the daylight detector. I always used to call them daylight sensors, and I think I still do, but you know, this is really strange. Right now it looks like it's just powering things, and it's just straight powering. Well, that's because it's right now between evening and night. And you'll see in just a moment, which, I mean, it may take a little bit, but you'll see that one of these will depower, and that'll be this one. There we go. I had to speed up the process. Taking too long. But yeah, it depowered. And what does this mean? Well, it has 2 different settings. It's day detection, and it's night detection. And these are pretty easy. This one looks like a moon. This one sort of looks like a pale sun. And so what it's doing is it's powering when it detects that it's nighttime. And you'll see right here. And you may think, oh, wait, where's the night version? Is there a night version? Like the comparator, you can set it to that by simply right-clicking. And right-clicking again to set it back. And so this works like this. Yeah, pretty nice and easy. And if I turn this to day, detect day, this will then depower because, well, it's not day. But if I set it to day, there we go. This one will depower because, well, it's no longer night. And this one will power because it's day. And if you surround this, well, I simply surround it in blocks. It has to have access to light. And this is tinted glass, so it can't get any light through. If I break this glass, it has light shining in, and so it powers. If I place it back, it'll depower. And this can be from any angle there, as long as there's light shining in. And you'll see, if we quickly switch it to nighttime mode, it's actually detecting the dark, which is really interesting. So right now it's dark enough in there that it thinks that it's nighttime. So even if we switch it to midnight, well, nothing changes. And, well, it's still powering because there's now nighttime coming in. But if we switch this to day, close it here, well, nothing works. Even if we let moonlight in, it doesn't power it. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And well, as you can see right here, there's nothing else to learn about it. It simply detects day and night. So, well, yeah, that's pretty simple. Next on the list is the dropper and the dispenser. These guys are pretty fun, and they have little faces, just like the observers do. And they're pretty cute. But they do two different things. So the dropper will, like it says, will drop the item. The dispenser will dispense the item. And so if we click here, it will dispense an arrow, as if you shot it, which is pretty useful in traps and stuff like that. And the dropper will, well, drop the item, or shoot it out, sort of. And if we switch this out with, well, something more, well, droppable, it will simply just fire it out. And nobody will get hurt. Yeah, we'll stick the arrows back in there. Just for, demonstration uses. Okay. And we move on from this. You'll see that these can actually be powered not by just players, but also remotely. So you can power them with a constant power source. And, well, it'll only fire off once. But if we set up to clocks, which I'll show back there, it'll actually constantly power. And you can keep clicking this. And it'll keep firing. And this is the dispenser here. And if you click this, it'll do the exact same. And we'll quickly just pick those up. There we go. But if we set it up to clocks, we can actually have it constantly power. And it seems to be shooting out of his nose, which is really weird. But yeah, if we retract this quickly, we can depower it. Yikes, that fired off a lot of arrows. And you'll also see that it can actually, the dropper can actually shoot through blocks. And it'll shoot it at a random angle. And if we destroy that, it'll actually fire a little straighter. Let's quickly shut this off. Yeah. There we go. And I don't know. Can this actually fire through the block? Nope. It'll simply just sit in this block when I break. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty neat. And you can set up to redstone clocks. And like I said, I may do a video on redstone clocks. I'm going to quickly set it today, as it seems to constantly becoming night. I could change the cycle thing, but I mean, I need it for demonstration reasons and other things like that. Okay, next on our list, we have the trap chest. And you can see right here, there's a bit of a difference. There's a red band, which resembles sort of redstone. And we have the, well, this shadow, which just is regular chest. What's the difference between them? Well, one, when open, sends a signal. And when closed, it depowers. So every single time you open it, it sends a signal, which is really nice. And I think you can see it sorted there. That's powering the redstone. The regular chests, well, they don't send signals. And you actually see this redstone is traveling into the chest, and this redstone here isn't traveling in its chest. And that's not because of my fault. It's because this is a redstone block, or a redstone component, so it's traveling into the block. And so yeah, that's pretty nice. So that's actually it. Like, there's nothing else to talk about this. Like, you can set it up for traps. You could have TNT, like, sitting a block below this, so something like that. And when I activate it, it'll power the block. And so yeah, you could have it for traps. Just set a piece of TNT under there or something and have it blow up your friends when they open their chest next. As long as they don't see this, you can cover it up with signs or something like that, and that'd be pretty useful. All right, next on our list, we have the hopper. This guy is really useful and used a lot in contraptions. And what he simply does... quiet. We'll get to you soon. What this simply does is suck items from up to down. So if I stick an item in here, well, I'll show you just real quick. This has nothing in it. Yep, there's nothing for it to get stuck in. There's nothing. I'm not tricking you. But if we put something in, it'll disappear, go into here, which it goes really quickly, and go into here. So out of the chest, into the hopper, through the funnel, into the chest. And there's no way for it to go back up. It's a one-way trip. Yep. And we can even put it directly inside of the hopper. And it'll go right down. So yeah, that's really nice. And it's pretty simple. And it can face all 5 directions. We got the right, the left, back, forwards, and down. So yeah, those are the only directions it can face. It cannot face up, so yes. And you can throw items into it too, so... and it just goes right in. Yep. Oh, well, I missed that. Ignore that. Let's try that again. There we go. Yep. See, it went in. Yep. Flawlessly. Not a mistake at all. And you can attach hoppers to hoppers. They can funnel right down. Whoops, made a mistake. And there we go. Okay, yeah. And it will funnel through. It'll go into this hopper, and then finally into this chest. And you can do things like go this way and then go that way. And so this is really fun. You drop that in there, and it ends up in this chest. And actually beat it since it goes a little bit slower through hoppers. But there is something with this. If you power the hopper, it'll actually lock the hopper. And what does lock the hopper mean? Well, if I throw an item onto it, well, it just doesn't go in. It just can't go in. But if we simply break this torch, you'll see it'll disappear, go into the hopper, and then go into here. And then we can lock the hopper again. And, well, if I stick this item in here, no, it's still in the hopper. So, yep, it's locked. It's stuck there. And if we click this, well, it goes back in. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. And what can you do to this? Well, you can lock it from the side as well. So this will go in because it's unpowered. When I power it, you'll see it'll be stuck in there and it can't go into this one. And when I click that, well, then it goes down. And this system is used a lot in storage systems. In fact, it's the main thing with storage systems when it has sortings. So as you can see here, I've set up a simple storage system. And it's, well, I don't know what it's storing. It's storing redstone currently. So we'll simply just take one of these. There we go. And yeah, right now I have this set up. This is a whole nother thing. You can learn about this. These are my placeholder blocks if you're wondering why they're named that. But yeah, it's essentially, like I said, the comparator is comparing the signal in here, what's all in here, and it's sending out a signal strength for how many blocks there are in it. And so currently, there's not enough signal strength to go down here, which is not enough signal strength to power this, which is not enough signal strength to depower the torch, which is locking this hopper, meaning nothing can travel through. But if we stick this in here, yep, we'll just let that drain for a little bit. It's going to start draining through here, because now the signal strength is strong enough to power this block, which is powering that block, which is depowering the torch, which is unlocking this hopper. And it's traveling so fast, well, you can't see anything. It's just constantly traveling through there. And so, yep, it's unlocking it. And we're back to the 12 items here and the 30 items here. And the 1 item there. And yep, all 64 of the items, I accidentally took out one. All 64 of the items made it in. And yeah, that's pretty simple. And, well, I may be able to do a video on these things like I said before. But yeah, next on our list, we have the Redstone Lamp. I've used this a lot. Quiet. It's simply just a light source. It's a powerable, toggleable light switch. So right now here it has a constant power source going into it, so it's constantly powered. And you can power this using levers, as buttons, and you can place stuff right on top of it. And using the daylight detector, it can actually power this since it's always day. So that could be things like, well, let's say you had street lamps and you want it to only turn on at night. So you can simply have something go like this. So this will only power at night. So your streets can light up at night. Or you can have it set like this and it will only power when it's day. So yeah, that's really nice. And well, that's all you need to know about the Redstone Lamp. It's pretty simple. Next on our list, we have the calibrated Sculk Sensor and the Sculk Sensor. These guys were added, well, a little while ago. Not super old, but not super new either. But what do they do? Well, the calibrated Sculk Sensor is a little more useful than the Sculk Sensor, but they still have their parts. The Sculk Sensor detects everything. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Dropping a block, whether you're placing a block, breaking a block, a cow's moving. Yeah, see, it's detecting the cow. It just detects everything, and this guy seems to be detecting everything as well. Well, you can actually calibrate the Sculk Sensor so it only detects certain things. And I have a lectern here with a comparator, and this is how you make it. So you have a comparator running out from the lectern and into this calibrated Sculk Sensor, and you need to make sure that this crystal part is running into this. And you'll see here, if we have this page set here, I'll set it to 1, which is walking. This is sending out a signal strength, and it's walking. So when I walk, this powers. And I jump, well, it doesn't power because I'm not walking. When I throw an item, it yet again doesn't power. And now it's raining. Delightful. There we go. It's finally clearing up. With a little command magic. Hey. But if I set it over to the next one, which is falling, or jumping, I fell, technically. So yes, it's now detecting me falling. If I fly up, it's not going to detect that. But once I fall and hit the ground, it detects that. But it doesn't detect walking or placing or anything of that sort. And I have a couple of these written down. Not all of them I knew. Projectile, so shooting a projectile. Armor on. I don't know what 5 was or 6. Taking damage. Eating food. I didn't know what 9 was, or 10, 11. Breaking blocks. Placing blocks. And yeah. There is one where it's armor off. That's probably what 5 was, is armor off. I just don't know if I placed that one on. So yeah, right now it's not detecting anything because, well, it's only set to a specific one, which is 5, which I don't know right now. Sculk Sensors also set out their own signal. So as you can see here, they send out a redstone signal. And let's see if I can demonstrate that there. Let's see. Okay. So as you can see, when I activate it, it sends out redstone signals. So this allows you to power things, and they're really good for traps if you want to use that kind of thing. Wool is a way to stop that from happening. As you can see here from all these sides, it cannot hear me. The one hearing is this one. But if I go onto this side, it can hear me because the wool isn't blocking it anymore. And on top, that also works. But once I go behind the wool, it can't hear me. You can also, if you block it all the way around, you can cover it with water, and then it won't make any noise. As you can see, it's sending out a signal, but it's not making any noise. And yeah, that's the Sculk Sensor. It's mainly used for traps, and I don't know what else you might want to use it for. You have a secret door that when you take off your armor, it will open, and then when you put it back on, it'll close the door. And this guy's demonstrating our next item, which is the Tripwire Hook and also string, because these both go together. Essentially what's happening here is you're setting up 2 tripwire hooks adjacent from each other and string running between. So when they're not attached, they look like this, and then when you place string, they attach. And then you can walk over it, and it'll activate and send out a signal through this block. So you'll see that here. And for however long I'm standing on it, it'll stay powered. When I step off, it'll turn off. Also a great thing is, I believe it goes up to 32 blocks. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I'm not exactly sure, but it's got a really long range on it. So yeah, you can set these up with a lot of traps, and it's practically invisible. There it is. It cannot go vertically at all. And you see right here, it just does not attach. So you're limited to this going horizontally, but that still makes for some pretty good traps. Next up on our list is the copper bulb. Now I use the oxidized copper bulb, but it doesn't really matter which one you use. So this actually has a strange mechanic. Hello, cow. Yeah, you just have to be everywhere. What happens is it takes 2 flips of the switch before it depowers and powers. So as you see right here, it powers, and that just took me 1. When I flip again, that little red dot's gone, but it's still powered. And when I flip again, finally it turns off. And now, when I flip again, the red dot goes away, but it's still depowered. When I flip again, it then powers. And so it takes 2 flips of the switch before it powers and depowers. Now these can be powered by redstone blocks or signals running into them, as shown right there. But there's a bit of a difference in these blocks, and that's when they are weathered. So I had a completely oxidized here copper bulb, and then we have some partially oxidized, so weathered. That's the same, but we got the waxed, oxidized, and so yeah, this one's exposed. And then we got the weathered, and we got the completely oxidized. So what do these do? Well, these actually have different light. They actually emit different types of light. So I guess I just pick these up real quick. Okay, so this one, when placed down, emits that much light, which is pretty small. And this one, when placed down, emits that much light. And you see the difference there. And this one, when placed down, emits that much light. And then the regular copper bulb, which right here, we'll just have this one. It emits the full 15. So yeah, there's definitely a difference there. And you can wax these and then... Oh, wow, I've unwaxed. Yeah, you can make these lighter by waxing off. There you go. And then you can have a really bright light. Next up on our list, and the last thing, is the target block. This guy is really useful in contraptions, but what does it do? Well, it's a diverting block. What do I mean by that? Well, you can see right here. The redstone, without this block, simply just travels along like this. And it doesn't activate anything. It just goes by without doing a thing. But if we switch out the block with a target block, since it's a redstone component, the redstone travels into this block, thus powering the block, which then sends out a signal above it and off to the side and whatever it might be powering. So when I click, it powers this light, but this redstone goes by without powering this. So the redstone block is a diverting block. As you can see here, it just go, without this, it would just turn the corner, and well, it'd never power. But if we place this, the redstone travels into this block now. So now it powers. And since the target block has, well, no redstone use, it doesn't activate anything, so it's really great block to have as a diverting block. Now there's other diverting blocks, and those blocks are blocks like buttons. Now, buttons don't work so well when you're trying to power a block above. Or even if you're trying to power anything, really. Buttons just can't power things. But as you can see, it is diverting the redstone. Levers do that as well. But yet again, they can't power things, so the target block is really just the best block to use. And, well, you should be proud of yourself now, because you've just made it all the way through all of this redstone. There we go. All of this, you guys made it through. That's a lot. But now that you know it, it's probably not as daunting as it may seem. Or maybe it still is. If so, you could go through this video a couple times if you need to, however much you need to, and re-listen to and watch how everything works. I hope I made sense and could explain it as best as I could. If I missed something or just didn't explain it very well, I'm sorry about that. I mean, I'm sure you can find other videos that will explain it better than I did. I'll be leaving some videos of the comparator, as I talked about, that were really, really helpful to me. Like, it was very, very helpful. I also get some of my information from a Redstone book by Mojang. It's called The Minecraft Guide to Redstone. It's the revised version. It's pretty good, actually. I'd suggest getting it just if you're a basic redstoner, and even if you're not, it really explains things pretty good and could be a help to you. If you really like this video, like it and comment down below. If you'd like to see a video like this, but explaining more of the redstone circuits and logic gates, I'd be happy to do that for you. It's really fun to do tutorials. But yeah, once you've learned these, then you'll start seeing all these little bits in the contraptions themselves. And so we're going to start with these very basics. But if I do a video on logic gates and circuits, you'll start seeing those circuits in bigger contraptions. So yes, it just starts with big contraptions, but big contraptions are really just small circuits and logic gates. And logic gates and circuits are made up of all these components. And if you know these, well, then you're off to a pretty good start. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas, as I know this will be after Christmas when this releases, I'm pretty sure. But, yeah, and maybe before New Year's, hopefully. But Happy New Year's to you as well, if I do get this out late. And may God bless you and keep you, and I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and Advent season, and a wonderful New Year. Bye!